Hello and welcome to the Buckets and Tea NBA show. I'm your host, Cathryn Naiker. Thanks so much for tuning into this week's episode. Today, my guest, you probably know him, you probably love him. It's Louis Zatzman. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, I am doing wonderful. Thank you. It's a pleasure. It's so good. I know we talked about doing this before, first time I've ever been on. So really, really happy to be here.
Yeah, and you know what I just realized is that I think I'm rounding around my 1 year anniversary of joining Raptors Republic. So
Wow.
that's
Year's
exciting
a long time
for me. A year is a long
in this
time.
space.
And I want to thank you because you're the one who initially brought me on. So it's nice to finally have you on the show.
We'll call it a 1 year anniversary celebration.
Yes, exactly. I have to say today, it's been an emotional roller coaster for me because we're recording this on Thursday, December the 8th, and Brittney Griner has been released today. I woke up to like tears of joy. Oh my God, I could even cry talking about it now. So if you don't know, I cover the WNBA as well in a podcast called The Pickup and hosted by Freddie Rivas, who also does Confederacy of Dunks here on Raptors Republic. And we have been following this so closely, so intensely since it first happened last February. And so now to see that she's been freed, she's coming home. Oh my God. And then before we started recording, Celine Dion announces she's been diagnosed with like this very rare neurological disorder. I can't handle this, Louis.
I know. It's a lot. I don't know that you can't handle it. I know that it's an enormous amount of news about the people we care about.
Oh my God. It's a
things
lot.
Can't be good, but don't let the bad take away from the good. You know, just celebrate Brittney's release. It has been a long nightmare for her and her family. And so it's just unbelievable news.
Yeah, well said. I completely agree. I just had to start off by saying it because I'm just thrilled. And like truly like the Phoenix Mercury are my favorite team and she's on that team and she's really one of my favorite players. So there's like, I'm happy for her as a human being first, but, and then as a basketball fan second, but really happy as a basketball fan too. I'm just really excited to see her back. Hopefully she'll release a statement soon in the next coming days. The WNBA season doesn't start till May. So if she does want to come back, she will have time to figure all of that out. And we're just thrilled. Okay, NBA stuff. So, it's been an interesting week for Trae Young and Nate McMillan of the Atlanta Hawks over there. Last Friday, they kind of got into a bit of an argument during practice. Apparently, Nate McMillan wanted Trae Young to participate in a shoot around, but Trae Young wanted to focus on rehabilitating his shoulder. And then he said, "We'll see how I feel after that." And Nate McMillan didn't like that response. And, there's conflicting reports about what he said after the fact because the Athletic initially reported that Nate McMillan said, either you do this shoot around or you don't bother coming to the game. And then Nate McMillan has since denied that he told Trae Young not to show up to the game. But in any case, all this led to Trae Young not showing up to their game against the Denver Nuggets. They ended up winning that game somehow, which is wild. And so since then they're trying to do this whole, it was a private matter, it got leaked, blah, blah, blah kind of thing. But it's been a pretty weird scenario, don't you think, Louis?
Yeah. So I buy the private matter. The private matter is that's a cloak that's thrown over a whole host of things in the NBA, sometimes rightfully, sometimes wrongfully. So, Draymond Green trying to knock out his teammate, maybe wrongfully. Trae Young and Nate McMillan arguing about whether he participates in shoot around. That feels like it's not really that important. I don't understand. And had it not gotten leaked, he would have sat out a game with shoulder soreness and no one would have cared. It's just, that happens all the time in the NBA. Not just slight disagreements, but much more vociferous arguments between coaches and players, staffers. It's a very stressful and emotional place professional sports. Even weirder, though, the Hawks in general, weird vibes this season. And this is just one part of those vibes, eh?
Yep. Even though they're still doing well. I mean, I forgot to check this morning. Are they still 4th in the East or something? I'm going to Google that.
Yeah, so
up
they're
right now.
13 and 12, which it would be the same as the Raptors.
Oh, they're 5th right now currently as of this recording, but it's so close. I mean, it could move even as of tonight. But yeah,
3 teams at 13 and 12, 5, 6, 7.
I mean, it's funny too, the thing you say about, it being leaked and, this is a private matter and stuff. I agree, like, to some extent. I mean, I think once he misses a game, suddenly it's not a private matter anymore. But I also think we just live in a world now where, like, if it exists, it's going to get leaked. I'm not saying that's right, but that's just kind of the world we live in now, right?
Especially with betting taking over all coverage. People are going to care so much more about whether Trae Young plays or not. This isn't the Tinder that sparks the explosion, but something will, with the betting and the private versus public and everything leaking and player empowerment leading to lots more. There's a fire brewing in this. And this is just, this is generally nothing. I'm sure within a week, everyone will forget about this. But yeah, something's going to happen that's going to be crazy, and people are going to feel strongly on all sorts of sides.
Yeah, I agree. I think, just to put like a bit of a baby conspiracy hat on for just a second,
yes.
Like, I think the next CBA negotiation is going to be heated. I think it's going to be really, really heated. And I would not be surprised if it leads to a lockout, because I feel like, exactly as you're describing, all of this is going to come to a head eventually. And I think that's where it's really going to happen.
Yeah. And I think there's going to be a lot more than just revenue share, which seems to be what the last few have just been percentages. I think this upcoming one, there's going to be a whole lot of, like, even going back to the bubble, I know that players, grudges is the wrong word, but players definitely registered what the franchises valued in terms of, in terms of social activity versus money making. And they took note of that. And I think the players and the owners were on really different wavelengths in terms of what they wanted to accomplish. And you saw all sorts of quotes, like Fred VanVleet, for example, saying, maybe, was it Fred? I forget who. Someone said maybe we shouldn't have come back if this is just what it's going to be. And it was about, what are we actually trying to accomplish? And I think things like that are just, important indicators that revenue share is not going to be the only thing under discussion in this upcoming CBA.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, like, even if Trae Young's being a bit of a brat, like, it's hard to tell. But one thing I will definitely say in his defense is I don't think Nate McMillan should have a say in his health status. And I don't think any coach should have a say in a player's health status. Like, if he wants to work on rehab of his shoulder and then see how he feels later, it feels like a pretty reasonable thing to want to do. I mean, I think, like, Nate McMillan, maybe in his playing days, it wasn't quite like that, like, it was probably more toxic than that. And he probably put up with a lot more pain than maybe this generation, but I don't think that's necessarily healthy. And, I think in terms of, like, when players play and when they don't, and to what degree they have a full say in that, when can they change their minds? I think all of that is going to come up in the next CBA too. And a lot of that is more subjective and hard to actually, like, put into words or numbers or anything. So.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. It's a weird, like, either you participate in shoot around or you don't play tonight. If that's what happened, that's so bizarre. But, yeah, I mean, even broadly, subjective versus objective medical awareness, we see all the time. Kawhi Leonard, for example, in San Antonio, was clearly misdiagnosed, led to all sorts of tensions between him and the coaching staff because they said the doctors say you're fine, so you're playing, and that wasn't the case. In general, it seems like all the time we have these examples of players who may be in the right, but they carry themselves in sort of a sniveling way, and so it's hard for people to side with someone like Trae Young. But I don't know if that's necessarily fair about him. That's probably not fair at all about him. But regardless,
this podcast isn't about what's fair, Lewis. Go in.
In general, players should be trusted more about their bodies because they know best.
Yeah, I mean, that is true. And I remember a while ago, Jalen Rose was saying this on his Jalen and Jacoby pod. This is like years ago now, but he says it multiple times and it really stuck with me. Is like sometimes you have to save a player from themselves. So sometimes the opposite is true. Like somebody really, really wants to play, and maybe when they shouldn't play. I mean, maybe the most infamous, Fred VanVleet, most infamous example of that is Kevin Durant in the 2019 finals, right? Like that's probably the most infamous example of that. So yeah, I think it kind of goes both ways, but in either case, a coach should not have a say in that, I don't think.
Yeah, it's the medical staff and the player, really.
Yeah, I think they got to.
And medical staff can overrule coaching staffs as well. Medical staffs can say this guy's not allowed to play, and then the coach follows that rule.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just a bizarre situation out of Atlanta. Somehow they're still fifth in the East. I mean, I think, the East is slowly starting to break away, especially with Boston doing so well and the Milwaukee Bucks doing really well. We are going to see, I think, in the next month, a greater separation between all these teams. And it'll be interesting to see where Atlanta is in like a month from now. I think, does Trae Young and Nate McMillan actually work things out or not? Whether there's a coaching firing or not, I'm curious to see if they actually stay in the top 6 in the East right now. Cause I have a feeling that, they also have a lot of injuries too right now. Like they had a blowout loss against the Knicks last night. There were a lot of players on their team not available for that game. But yeah, I'm not convinced they'll stay in the top 6 a month from now.
I think the Hawks are good. I think because their offense is like bizarrely bad. And I think a lot of that is just Trae Young's missing threes he makes. He's missing a lot of layups he makes. But they're a lot better when he's on the court. Like his offensive on-offs are same as they always are. Like they're just really good at offense when he's on the court. Really bad when he's not. If he starts making shots, I mean, the defense is a lot better. I don't know. I buy improvement for all the East teams that traded for stars like Cleveland, Atlanta. I think, the East is a lot better as well.
The East is a lot better. That much I agree with. I think, Trae kind of, in some respects, reminds me of a very young Kobe, in that young Kobe would throw up a lot of ill-advised shots. You know what I mean? Like Kobe, Kobe would take a lot of ill-advised shots, but I think he had a lot of other people around him being like, you can't do that. And then eventually he learned to kind of rein it in. And I don't think Trae has that. He doesn't.
I love the way you say young. You hit the G in young.
Really? You say it.
Yeah, I say young. You say young.
Oh. I don't know how to react to that. Do I like my version better?
Yeah, it's good. It has cachet. You care, like it's.
Oh,
you
okay.
Comport yourself well.
Maybe that's just the performer in me.
Yeah.
I'm really gonna enunciate and go for it. Anyway, in no way am I saying Trae Young is Kobe Bryant. Don't at me in the comments. I'm just saying a young Kobe would throw up a lot of ill-advised shots, and he had people that reeled him in. And I don't think Trae has that. I kind of think that's a little bit of what's missing in his life right now.
Phil Jackson?
A Phil Jackson, or a Shaq, or somebody that's like, you need to make better decisions sometimes on the court.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing. A lot of superstars
go through that. Yeah.
When they come into the league, are on a team with another star or former star, or, you saw that with Luka Doncic, got to be on the same team as Dirk, and Wade and Shaq. And it's pretty common that these guys have people who've been where they want to get to. And Trae Young has never really been teammates with someone like that.
Yeah, I mean, the closest was maybe Vince Carter, but Vince Carter didn't win it all.
That's true. I forgot.
Yeah. But that would be the closest thing that he had to that. And Vince Carter's more like, I will teach you how to be a journeyman and how to be in this league for a really long time, but not
you want to play until you're
win.
52? I'll teach you to play until you're 52.
Yeah. So anyway, I just think that that's the one thing that's really missing with him, but very curious to see where that team goes in the next few months. Yeah. Okay. Another funny NBA topic. Well, I think it's funny. The NBA unveiled new trophy designs, as well as a new trophy for best NBA record. Some of these trophies, they look like a vase, a vase. Yeah. What do you say, Lewis? Do you go vase or do you go vase?
Oh, I'm not committed to either. I'll say either.
Okay.
I'm a lunatic.
You know what? We're just gonna just rotate between the two throughout the segment, just to like really throw people.
Oh man, controversial.
Controversial. To me, I mean, I don't know how much I love these designs, to be honest. What do you think?
Yeah, I've never really been one to look at this. This is the first time. Like right now, I'm looking at pictures of these awards. This already, in the 30 seconds we spent on the segment, is the most time I've spent looking at.
Yeah, well, this is what Buckets and Tea is all about. You know what I mean? We're gonna
absolutely
critique the design of these awards.
They're very see-through. They look breakable. They look like you take them home and you celebrate, and it breaks before you go to bed that night.
Right. Yeah, they do look fragile. I think like the Red Auerbach Coach of the Year award, it used to be like Red Auerbach on a bench. And it was like this clay, I don't know, copper kind of thing. And I was like, that was cool. I actually really liked that. And now it's like he's kind of sitting on a bench, but it's like within the vase. And I'm like, this is weird. I think for sure, Red Auerbach would have broken this trophy, is what I'm saying.
What's the there's like a valuable jewel that has insects frozen inside of it. Amber, am I thinking of amber?
From Jurassic Park?
No, well, yeah, but also from life. I think amber has like insects frozen inside, ossified, petrified. That's what these awards look like. It looks like the spirit of Red Auerbach is trapped inside of a glass cage of emotions.
Oh my God, I love that. I love that. And we have to extract his DNA to create a sea of Red Auerbachs on an island.
That's on an island, an amusement park, if you will.
That would be a pretty dull island, I think.
You'd have that's the C plot. You need something more.
I assume he was a heavy drinker. I have no idea. But I just think it would be a lot of bars, a lot of Irish pubs, maybe.
Yeah, maybe it could be more of a drama about the human psyche, like a Coen Brothers film,
Yeah, I mean, this looks like something I would keep flowers in. Like it just looks
put flowers,
which maybe that's not a bad idea. Okay, if Lewis, I didn't ask you this question, but I'm going to ask you now. If you could redesign these awards, like get to that thinking cap on, let's get creative here. If you could redesign it, what would you do?
Oh God. I am so poor at design that, and this is true, I'm not allowed to design any of the thumbnails for my articles on Raptors Republic.
Not allowed?
Forbade me. I'm so poor at design, and I need to ask for help whenever I make a thumbnail.
Well, now I really want to see it.
No, I'm really bad. I have like an 8-year-old eye for design.
Oh my God.
So if I were to design it, probably put some dinosaurs in there. No, I don't know. I actually, they look pretty now that I'm asked to change it. I'm like, oh, they're beautiful, which I never thought until you asked me to change it. I don't know okay.
Do you like
Better
them? If
served
you
for
like them, that's fine. You can like them.
How would you change them?
Um, I would like see, because the thing is, if it's gonna, because the thing with vases and flowers is flowers die, right? But a plant, you can keep going. So if it's gonna be like that, I'd rather it be like, yeah, see, like you've got lots of greenery behind you. Mine's more over there where the window is, but
Just
if
out
you're
of
gonna,
frame.
yeah, just out of frame where they're all dead. No kidding. And then it's like, if you're gonna do all of that, make it a plant. But with that being said, I really love the Red Auerbach like literal statue with him on the bench. I think these should just be statues of the guys, like the Oscars. That's what I would want.
Yeah. Not
That to
trapped
me feels more
inside of
iconic
glass.
to me. The new award for best record in the regular season. How do you feel about that? And do you think it'll give the NBA regular season greater importance, which I imagine is the goal of this award in the first place?
I mean, maybe the tiniest fraction of importance will be given to it, but in general, I think the idea of these awards and putting names on it. It's the first what's it called? The guy Adam Silver. It's the first commissioner, right? Maurice Podoloff. That's the new award.
Right, that's who it's named after.
I think in general, these things are just nice for lore building about the NBA. Add some myth to it. Putting Red Auerbach's name on something is valuable, even aside from the thing itself. It's just nice for the NBA to build its sort of mythology. The same as the top 75 players, and putting all these players on a list.
Right.
It matters to the players, definitely. And I'm not sure it'll matter to the team that wins this award, the Maurice Podoloff Award. But it matters to, a 7-year-old or something who's getting into basketball and comes across this and finds the history. It gives more roots to fandom, putting the name on it and having the award. So even if the team doesn't care, even if hardcore fans don't care, media doesn't care, I think there is still value to it.
That's very nice and sentimental of you. I appreciate it. To me, this felt a little bit like a best attendance award in high school, where whoever gets it, like for sure is not showing off that they got it.
Sorry, did you go to a high school that gave a student an award for
best attendance? Yeah. Was that unique to me? I just thought that was every high school. Wow. Well, the thing is, I went to a bad high school. So it's like probably like one person had the best attendance.
Was there
or perfect attendance? I'm calling it best.
Yeah, was it perfect?
I think it was perfect attendance. Now that I'm now that I'm saying it out loud, but in my mind it was best attendance because I'm like, no one at that school had perfect attendance.
Yeah, did anyone in any high school have perfect attendance?
I don't know, but there was this one girl I went to school with who got that award every year, and we were friends, so I low-key knew she had it.
But she hit it.
Yeah. You don't brag about that.
So the Phoenix Suns last year, the Milwaukee Bucks in 2018-19, teams that don't do well in the playoffs and win this, you think they're going to hide it?
Well, I mean, because it's a formal thing, they'll probably do something like maybe at the tip-off of like the first playoff game.
Yeah.
Right? Because obviously that's going to be a home game. Yeah.
Well, they won't have lost yet, so it won't be sad yet.
Yeah, so it won't be sad. But, those teams, like, historically, they celebrate a little early. Yeah. Right? Like, I was very critical of the Phoenix Suns when they got to the finals that year. I think that was 2021, right? And they won their Western Conference trophy, and they were like parading around with that trophy. And I was like, you lost right there. The second I saw that, I was like, they're not going to win.
What was her name? Your friend, who just a first name. We don't.
Her name was Hamsha. Shout out to Hamsha.
Hamsha. Phoenix and Hampshire.
Same thing, same energy. Yeah. I haven't kept in touch with Hampshire, but she was very smart. I'm sure she went on to do amazing things like become a doctor or something. So yeah, there we go. To me, yeah, it has perfect attendance energy to it, but I agree with your sentimental take that it adds more allure to the history of the NBA. So that's nice. That's fun all around. And no, I don't think it'll actually add any more value to the regular season. But shout out for trying.
Shout out for trying.
Okay, we're gonna move on to some Raptors talk now. Fred VanVleet's been in the news a lot this week, mainly for his shooting slumps, but also there was this crazy thing with his Instagram where he unfollowed his teammates and everyone on Twitter was freaking out. And then he was asked about it. I believe it was after last night's game against the Lakers.
I was there.
You were there in person. See, this is what I want to ask you. So, okay, first of all, who asked? Who asked the question?
So it was Michael Grange.
Okay.
Who is a serious reporter.
Uh-huh.
And he did it well. He did it in a way where he threw himself under the bus during the asking.
Oh, tell more.
He came to Fred, on his knees type thing, his hands held high. And he said, "Look, I'm sorry. I have to ask." And Fred immediately got the joke and he was in on it. At that point, it was a joke. It wasn't like,
yeah.
He was like, "No, you, Mike. Come on, Mike." I can actually quote here. If I'm just going to talk,
please quote
aimlessly for 10 to 20 seconds, maybe even bordering on 45 seconds. Here, I'm going to get the exact quote, but and Fred wasn't upset about it because he could have been, right?
Yeah, but he probably knew it was coming.
Yeah, he knew exactly what was coming. He had like a Godfather-esque response. Okay, so Michael Grange asked. He said, "You're breaking my heart, Mike. You're breaking my heart, Mike. I just want you to know that. Look at me." Because then Michael Grange wasn't looking at him, so he said, "Look at me."
He was too ashamed. He was too ashamed to look at.
He was too ashamed to look at it. He said, "Look at me." It was like the Godfather. So, he did it well in a way that Fred wasn't upset by the question, which I thought was really good journalistic technique. And so Fred said basically, which I'm sure everyone's seen the quote now. He said, "Look, I was in a slump, so I unfollowed everyone. I figured I'd give it a try." And this is something that the Raptors have done before. Pascal unplugged from social media in the past. As a side note,
he said he was fighting. Hard. He said he was fighting the algorithms.
Yes, Fred said he's fighting the algorithm. And it must be really hard because when you're a professional athlete and people say horrible things to you after every game, even if you play well. When you're in a slump, they say awful. Anyway, I'm getting a big tangent, sentimental tangent. But so he unfollowed everyone. He said, "Look, I was just trying to dodge the algorithm. I got caught." And everyone freaked out. He's like, because I think he unfollowed his wife as well. And he said, "I unfollowed my mom too, but no one's talking about that." And it's like, his point is he's just in a slump trying to get out of it. And everyone made a huge deal about it. So social media should not be the prism through which we understand anyone's psyche, but especially such public figures.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And also don't be afraid of the tangent on this pod. Okay, that's what this podcast is for. Yeah, I mean, it was funny. People really, really went wild about it. And, I don't know if it was the Panic fans or trolls of the Panic fans to get them to panic. But I felt like it got to a lot of people. And, was happy Michael Grange asked the question, to clarify it. If it wasn't him, here's a question for you, Lewis. If Michael Grange didn't do it, were you going to do it?
No.
You were not going to do it.
I didn't even know. I wasn't really on Twitter yesterday so much, and I hadn't heard any of this, what's the word? Hoopla. Until I got to the arena before the game and other reporters were talking about it. I was like, "Oh, what happened?" I didn't know. And so I wasn't really aware of the extent people cared.
You were not prepared.
I didn't even know of the unfollowing thing.
Right.
And so, no, I wasn't going to ask, but I also wouldn't have asked. I would ask someone in person. I'd take Fred to the side after, be like, "Hey, man, how you doing? You okay?" I wouldn't do that with the cameras on him, which is, now that I say that out loud, really stupid of me, because the point of me being there is to get answers for the camera. It's not to be a good person. He has people in his life to be good people. I'm not there to do that. So I realize now my mistake, but I didn't even know.
I don't know if I would call that a full-on mistake. I mean, your relationship with everyone is very valuable and important. And I think that's what you're thinking about in that scenario,
I just don't want
right?
You don't want to put someone on the spot on television.
Or do you?
That would be hard.
Because it's
I
good
don't.
ratings. No.
Maybe I should, though.
No.
That's like my job.
No, I don't think I totally understand where you're coming from, but I think it's the kind of thing where it's like, it's to Fred's benefit to clarify it, and like you said, I think, Michael Grange, was smart in the way he approached it. And I'm sure, like, I don't know who Fred has helping him behind the scenes, but I'm sure he was prepared.
Yeah.
He seems like a reasonable guy. Like, I think literally if it were like a Trae Young type who had a bit of a weird back and forth with the media when he was asked about why he missed the game, that was awkward to watch.
Yeah.
So I think if it was a different personality, it could have gone a different way. But I think, as he is called, Steady Freddy, is probably, not someone who's gonna overreact or be rude about it, I don't think.
And Raptors media is very soft. They don't try to play gotcha at all. There's a couple guys who will try to do that, but they're not around.
Names. No, I'm kidding.
No, I'll name a name. What's his guy? The guy everyone hates for the Sun. He asked Masai Ujiri like a "what about black crime" question.
Oh, I remember that. That was
I was there at that press conference. It was like, oh my God. It was humiliating just to be a journalist in the same room. Jesus. I can't believe I'm blanking on this.
That's okay. We don't. People can Google that if they want.
But yeah, so in general though, they're not there every game. And so the guys who are at the game, the beat reporters, are generally not trying to play gotcha. They're pretty respectful as far as compared to the other 29 teams goes. And so I think players know that. I think Fred knows people aren't out to get him from the media in Toronto.
Yeah, I think so. And I think do you think teams have other beat writers that are a bit more that way?
Oh yeah. Like the Knicks. Or, the Lakers. There's so many more reporters for these teams. And there's also reporters who get into these sort of clashes with players, not because they're being bad journalists, because they're being good journalists. Like Nick Friedel, I think, had that back and forth with Kyrie, where I was very thankful that he was actually sticking up on a moral point, and that Kyrie wasn't having his ignorance, let's go with, challenge, that he wasn't just able to spew it unchallenged. And so I think Toronto actually can lean too far to sort of not pushing maybe when things should be pushed. But in general, it does have lots of positive side effects, such as last night.
Yeah, my impression of a lot of the beat writers for the Raptors is that
Steve Simmons.
Steve Simmons. Well, shout out to anyone who already Googled it before we got
I'm sure everyone knew who we were talking about.
They're probably yelling the name at us
as
they're listening. Well, at least we got to it. Steve Simmons. Okay, so he's a loser. And no, but my impression of the Raptors beat writers is that everyone truly seems like a genuine fan.
Yeah.
Would you say that that's true?
Yeah, I think it's fairly young. Obviously Doug's been there from day one, which earns him a lot of cachet with players. Players really respect Doug. but outside of Doug, Josh Lewenberg is one of the major beat guys. He gets great access. Michael Grange, um, Eric Kareen for the Athletic. These guys are in their 30s. Grange, I think, is in his early 40s. But as far as like really established media, they're fairly young, I think, which means they grew up with Vince Carter. Like there's a reason why they're in basketball in Canada. You can be a journalist for something and not be a fan, but to be a basketball journalist in Canada, because 10 years ago when you went to journalism school, or 15 years or whatever, basketball didn't matter. No one played it. No one cared about it. And so, by and large, the beat in Canada is there for a specific reason, probably because they care about basketball, care about the Raptors.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I find a lot of American reporters, maybe like a Bill Simmons type aside, it's like they love the NBA, but they're not necessarily like homers.
You don't think Bill Simmons is the homer?
No, I said him aside. Like him as an exception, like him and like Stephen A. Like there's a few exceptions, but I think like a lot of people they're not necessarily homers. But
they
I feel like
be
all the Raptors
critical.
people are homers.
Yeah, a lot of journalists for other teams are almost more critical than they need to be. Whereas Raptors journalists, are probably more homers than they need to be. You're right. It's a different. Maybe it's a Canadian angle.
We're nice. We're soft. We're Canadian. It's what it is. No, I love that. I love hearing that. I love hearing behind the scenes little tidbits like that. But let's talk about Fred and his shooting slump. A lot has been made about this, and there's been a lot of takes across the board. One thing I read in the Athletic this morning that I thought was nice was just pointing out the fact that Fred always kind of holds himself accountable. And, he's never really like kind of delusional about himself. Like he knows he's in a slump more than anybody, essentially. And that was what I felt was a nice and refreshing take. You also wrote about it for Raptors Republic. So I just wanted to give you a chance to kind of elaborate more on your approach. I mean, you talked about how the slump has really kind of existed maybe even since last season, just in terms of his shooting percentage and how it's kind of spilt into this season.
The only thing I worry about, because good shooters break out of slumps. And Fred is not just good. He is one of the league's best shooters historically. So I'm not worried about a slump. What I am worried about is an extremely long list of career injuries. And his slump has coincided with a series of injuries. Knee injury, February 14th of 2022. That's when it began, right? When it begins with injury, it's frightening. And the other thing about a slump, Fred is a basketball genius. Most NBA players are geniuses at their sport, right? That's why they're there. Most professional basketball players, I should say. And no matter how, there's so many ways you can contribute with your brain, right? You can cut, you can make quick passes, you can rotate, you can think the game in so many ways to win. Kyle Lowry is the best example. But you cannot think your way out of a slump. No matter how smart you are, you cannot intelligence the ball into the net from the 3-point line. And it's something that all, brilliant players go through at some point. It's like, well, I can't, like, I'm so smart. I just can't think my way out of this hole. And your only way out of the hole is to just keep shooting until you're not in the slump anymore. And for Fred, it's been a really long time. I thought last night against the Lakers was a good example of him seeming to change his approach a little bit, get downhill, get some free throws. He was really effective around the rim too. But he took like 8 threes, which is, he needs to. This Raptors team doesn't have a lot of shooters. He needs to take a ton of threes. And even though he played a great game, he scored 25 points, I think, in just 3 quarters. He only hit 2 of those 8 threes, right? The 3-point shooting slump continues. And whether it is injury-based or whether it's just a really long slump, we'll find out. But it's the Raptors are not going to be the team they envision without Fred being one of the best shooters in the league.
Yeah, I mean, I believe Fred said, and I did read this, and I wish I had the article right in front of me, that at a certain point, like when it comes to a slump, it's just mental. and
Yeah.
he has to get out of it. And so to me, it's like, it's weird because that doesn't necessarily imply that it's physical, but you're obviously right about the timeline in terms of all of this.
Yeah.
So I guess like my question for you, and I don't know if you actually have an answer to this or not, but I mean, obviously, like a lot of people are calling on Nick Nurse to play in fewer minutes. That's been happening for like a year, frankly. And
Yeah.
then, but I also kind of
More.
understand it more than a year. And then I understand it on the flip side too, where it's like, it is his job to win games. And there's that part of it too. So it's like, I guess what I'm wondering is how, and this actually in a weird way kind of relates to the Trae Young conversation. How do the coaches, the players, and the medical staff like really communicate through that? You know what I mean? Because I don't think anyone's telling anyone within the Raptors organization is like, Nick, you gotta play Fred less. And I want to believe that if that was happening, he would. But I don't think that's happening. I think it's coming from fans and from other media. So yeah, and I don't think the fans and media are necessarily wrong either. So I'm just wondering, like, how do you think would be best for those three sides to communicate that?
My instinct on this is that the information gap between people within the organization, which are the three sides: coach, player, medical staff, and outside voices like ourselves, the information gap is so massive that we just have no way of knowing. Like,
Right.
it's almost impossible to comment. Nick says that that he says all the time, medical staff will tell him this is an injury that's just pain tolerance, pain management. It's not something that will be aggravated by continued play. And that's what he says. What are we supposed to do with that? Occam's razor, there's not a conspiracy here. Nick's not on the hot seat. He's not on the verge of being fired. He doesn't need to win a game this week to save his job next week. As in, he doesn't need to play Fred if there's a risk of aggravating an injury. And so when he says there's not a risk, Occam's razor, there's not a risk. And we just have no way of knowing. I've seen studies about increased playing time leading to an increased rate of injury. I've also seen studies saying that there is a slight correlation, but no strong correlation, or no strong causation established. It's just I haven't. And look, I know about basketball. I know about writing. I haven't learned about the medical stuff. And so I am probably on the very conservative side of not criticizing the franchise because they know better than we do, but they really know better than we do. Like, the information gap for what's going on the court is way closer. Like, I know the names of some of the plays. I know if a player misses a cut. I know if a player misses a box out. I don't know anything about the medical stuff. I'm not equipped to criticize or to praise.
Right. Do you wish that was different?
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that, we have injury reports. It would be nice to know that that's consistently accurate, let's say, because a guy can say, knee, and then he also has a hurt shoulder and a hurt ankle, and you don't know what's wrong with the knee. It's like, a lot of this stuff is really ad hoc. And I know from just the Raptors media room, a lot of the stuff we know about players, you only know because someone asks offhand. And maybe someone doesn't even ask. Like, we got a Wancho report the other day where Nick said, I don't know. And then he left, and then PR came in after and said, day to day. And that's all. And, no one dives in. It's just the amount that's reported, the accuracy, the understanding could be way, way better. But frankly, it's not televised, right? And the basketball is. And so it's a lot harder for us to demand accuracy without knowing what is or isn't accurate.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, this isn't on our docket, but I just want to throw something at you and feel free to be like,
Hit me.
Cathryn, no. But I feel like I've been a bit confused lately over Scotty Barnes and his injury status. I feel like there's some games where he gets kind of banged up and you're like, oh, I don't think Scotty's going to play the next day. And then somehow miraculously, not next day, but next game. And then somehow miraculously, like he's available again. And I have found it to be confusing and sort of coinciding with his, as people say, his sophomore slump. And I'm wondering, do you have feelings on that? Do you think Scotty is potentially more injured than maybe they're letting on?
Yeah. He moves like he keeps hurting his ankle.
Mm-hmm.
He's hurt his ankles 4 times now this season. As someone who hurts his ankle all the time when I play basketball, I know that you can still play just fine, and there's lots of ankle injuries that aren't going to get aggravated. I think one of the factors that makes it look like he's more injured is his role has changed a lot this season.
Right.
They were asking him to initiate plays, whereas last season they were asking him to finish plays, and that looks totally different. And so people see that and they're like, oh, he doesn't have the burst, he doesn't have the athleticism. Well, no, he's just doing different stuff. And so it's aesthetically different no matter what the ankle is. But, having seen someone roll their ankle on camera so many times and only miss, I think, 2 games for a knee injury, nothing to do with his ankle. Yeah, that's something that's a little more, there's more information for us to discuss. I would like to see him get that ankle right. I'm not certain it actually is affecting him on the court, but just by virtue of him having hurt it so many times, like, just get the ankle good.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because just from like an outsider's perspective, it's just hard to connect all those dots. It's just
Yeah.
hard to make sense of it all the time. And then you're just kind of like along for the ride, so to speak. And I do think there's something to be said for players having some sort of autonomy, especially when it comes to their health. But I also, but then, and then I'm also like, I wish there was more transparency. So I
Full
feel like
circle. We're right
I
back.
feel like I see both sides in a way,
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would be, if we're talking about private matter should remain private.
Which is the theme of
This
this
is
whole
one of,
episode.
yeah, which is privacy, I guess, is the theme. Yeah. This is one of those situations where, outside of what we're discussing, people talk about it way too much and with way more confidence than they should have, given how little information they have. And I don't mean just discussing like we're discussing. It's okay to be like, oh, is he hurt? Should he be rested? That's not, I think the over the top criticism of guys without knowing anything about their injury status can be jarring, I think, to see.
Right, like speaking about it in absolutes when you
Yeah.
don't have the full information is where it gets to be a bit of an issue, for sure. I totally see that. Yeah, Lewis, with that being said, I think it's time for a Nick Nurse Hottie Highlight of the week. And, talking about shooting slumps, well, one guy who doesn't have a shooting slump right now is Nick Nurse, because TSN's Josh Lewenberg captured him hitting one free throw after the other, baby. And it was fun to watch. Were you there? Were you present for this moment?
So I was not. I only go to practices when I need a specific thing, like if I need to talk to Christian Coloco, or because I have a young son, and
Bragging.
so I've sort of.
No, I'm just kidding.
So he's a cutie, but I generally don't go to everything unless I need to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was not at that practice. But I mean, the man's a shooting.
No, the other question is, are you filled with regret that you didn't go to that practice?
No, I think watching a man hit free throws I can live without that. A lot of coaches. You remember that video of Stan Van Gundy, like showing a crossover at an Orlando Magic practice, like
I do not
years and years
remember
ago.
that.
Yeah, he was showing. He's like, then you hit him with the, and he was like showing his crossover. Coaches generally know what they're doing, even the ones who didn't play in the league. Because Nick never played in the NBA, but he played high level basketball, and he was a shooting specialist, and he's a shooting coach, right? He has his like Nick Nurse Night School of Shooting or whatever.
Yeah, he has a book in that basketball, which I talked about.
If the man can't hit free throws, sorry, if he has what now?
No, he has a basketball in a book. I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's called The Pill.
No. But if he can't hit free throws, there's something seriously wrong with how he markets himself to the world. So thank God he can.
Do you feel like the world needed that level of reassurance?
Are people doubting? People are doubting. The Celtics game, I saw more rash calls for Nick Nurse to be on the hot seat than the Raptors lost to the best team in the NBA.
And not even by a lot.
Maybe he's on Twitter on his burner and he saw all those crazy tweets. He said, you know what? I'm going to hit some free throws on camera tomorrow. This will quiet him down.
Yeah, I don't know if he's got a burner or not. That would be the most intriguing thing ever. But yeah, a lot of people have been calling for him, probably the most ever since, he was first hired as head coach, because it's been, Tampa season aside, it's been pretty, smooth sailing in terms of just our appreciation for him. Although no, last year I think everyone being like, you got to play Fred yet less, and there are comparisons to Thibodeau there and stuff like that. But
last year they were winning a lot.
Yeah, we were winning more games. So it's maybe not, it's certainly not his highest point as a coach, but I mean, I'm biased because obviously I'm in love with the man, but I don't think we should be looking to get rid of him anytime soon, right?
Oh yeah.
How do you feel about Nick Nurse overall?
I have some takes. I think he is obviously a tactical revolutionary. He's really changed the way the league plays defense. He is an extraordinary X's and O's coach. You see it, the Raptors don't have a ton of shooting, but their baseline out of bounds play is the best. They score the most efficiently. Yeah. That's just coaching, stuff like that. He is, without any doubt, one of the best tacticians in the league. I do think there's something to player relationships. He and Pascal Siakam had a dust up in Tampa Bay.
Yes, they did.
OG Anunoby this past off season. There certainly wasn't nothing to that rumor, even though it was probably blown extraordinarily out of proportion. But as long as Fred is running the locker room, Nick is going to have support, right? It's going to be his locker room. He's not going to lose it with a loss to the Celtics by 5 points.
Right.
It would take a whole lot more. And, you saw Nate Bjorkgren try to move the Toronto system to Indiana, and he was run out of town. It's not easy to implement because it can be grating on your players. But it's implemented. The players respect him. There's buy-in, obviously, and so the tactical stuff is what matters. If there was a different person running the locker room, if there were more flare-ups, such as with Trae Young and Nate McMillan, then you'd start to think maybe, what's the trade-off? But there is no trade-off right now. He's just an extraordinary coach.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, Lewis, I appreciate your takes. There are certain people that I'm willing to hear criticisms of Nick Nurse from. You're one of them. So, high praise. But with that, I mean, that's been our episode. Very interesting episode today, Lewis. I feel like we got into some deeper stuff here, which I really, really appreciate. If anyone isn't following you, can you let us know where people can find you on the internet? Yes,
I am on the internet. Also, thank you for this. Has been never get to talk about this stuff, outside of just, at the bar with friends. So really appreciate this. It's a fun combo.
Well, this is what I'm here
But you
for.
can find me on Twitter. It's just my name, which you can see in lovely pink at the bottom.
Yeah, I'm unapologetically girly. Lewis, thank you again. Appreciate it. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week. Bye.